is the last.
Make you happy.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. My name is Jesse Rademacher. I'm the CEO and co-founder with Sean Rademacher of Madium. Madium we'll get to in a little bit, but we asked ourselves what the future looks like. We've been in the design industry for 35 years collectively, and we wanted to get out of the corporate experience of work as a creative. So we asked each other, what should it look like in 2035? Let's give ourselves a 15-year head start and build what we think is the future of the industry. And after doing a ton of research and talking to hundreds of creatives, we've actually assembled what we think is the trigger for the next creative renaissance, the next 200 to 300 year period in human evolution where creativity can be harnessed in vastly different ways. We think that the technology of today is actually culminating in a ton of leverage for people that actually create all the value in the industry and not just supporting them from a patronage model, but actually giving the creatives and the innovators and the makers and the assets, the athletes, celebrities, YouTubers. These people should be able to monetize their likeness directly, and that's exactly what we've built. But first, to give you a little bit of the background of how we ended up with these solutions, let's take a little bit of an inventory of history. We think that it's super important to look back, figure out where we were, where we went wrong as society, and then actually get to a new future. So we like to operate in first principles of always tearing assumptions down to really the core nugget of truth, and then building on facts back up to the industry rather than building on assumptions. So I want to take you on a quick journey about some of the Rademacher family lore. My great-great-grandfather, I'm fourth generation, so great-grandfather, actually came to the States from Germany not speaking a lick of English. He came in 1903. His name was Bernard, and he got on a ship, not an airplane, but he got on a ship and sailed over to Ellis Island, 12 years old. He was supposed to meet his uncle there at Ellis Island, and his uncle was going to take him on a train back to Chicago. Luckily, everything went well. Uncle met him at Ellis Island and was able to get him on the train. Well, unbeknownst to a lot of his relatives here in the States, Bernard actually had a wee bit of a sleepwalking problem. And what do you know, at nighttime on the train, Bernard walked right off of that train, tumbling, and found himself laying in a ditch. A 12-year-old laying in a ditch with no ability to speak English, no sense of direction, no tools like cell phones or apps to get him where he's going, no vehicle, and really even no form of communication. This is quite a daunting task for a 12-year-old to be plucked and just dropped into a foreign country without the ability to speak the language. Now, how drastically different it was 1903 versus today, 120 years later. And so to get from somewhere in Pennsylvania to Chicago is really not that daunting of a challenge now. Even if you are 12, there's translation apps. There's all kinds of tools at your disposal to get you where you're going. So this got us thinking. The last 100 years have seen so much significant change in technology, in the globe, in communication, but we feel like the creative industry itself has not progressed from some of the standard bearers that were put in place 140 years ago. So right now, let's examine Taylorism. Taylorism was invented or founded by Frederick Winslow Taylor in the 1880s. And really it was this idea that you could actually scientifically craft management of people, management of workflows, ways to get to efficiencies like never before. Again, this is pre-industrial revolution, and the idea was that if you could drive costs down, you could get to a new creative or a new attainment of the middle class. And really here, the most important thing is that the way to do that is efficiency. Efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. The efficiency gods were worshipped at all times, and every decision was viewed through the lens of efficiency. Well, now think about that. Is the creative process based on efficiency? Or naturally? Or have we been having to work in a system that values efficiency? We think it's the latter. And ultimately what they did there was they separated the thinkers from the laborers. The thinkers were the planners, the doers, the managers, the ones that were educated, the ones that had training. But don't confuse that with labor. Labor here, this big shift was going from craftsmanship, where an individual would take something and make it all the way to finish. And you could see individual craftsmen's hands on the finished product. Well, that is actually a threat to parts per minute. That's a threat to actually having parts that need to come together and assemble if they're being made by hand, right? So the idea here was that the thinkers would separate themselves from the laborers. The laborers would just become a piece in the conveyor belt, a piece in the manufacturing process, and that it didn't need to be a skilled job. So therefore, training and cost of overhead in training labor forces was drastically reduced, as well as errors. If one person just had to repeat the same thing over and over again, well, now we're getting to more efficiency with less human error. So here you can really see that labor was meant to be machinery, and the thinkers were the ones that briefed them on what to do. Unfortunately, this causes dramatic setbacks for creatives, ones that have the ideas. We're not the laborers, we're the thinkers. We're the ones that come up with better solutions. But as you can see, this is a process of efficiency in squeaking out profits at the highest and ever increasing rates, that a new idea in the middle of a manufacturing process or an assembly line is actually a threat to efficiency. So we think that the whole world, sum total, still operating under Taylorism, is actually not a very good system to push us into the future of the creative industry, the future of making, and ways to monetize that skill set. So Taylorism was great. It led us to the Industrial Revolution, attainment of the middle class, of product, and overall bringing costs down. But we're also still living with the downfalls of the Industrial Revolution and Taylorism. It has granted us a dystopian future. It's promising us more of the same. And we think that it's slightly moronic for creatives to continue in this structure and not actually improve the structure in which we work. So we're asking you to take a big step forward. Forget all the paradigms. We tried to change the industry from the inside, and it sucked, quite frankly. It was terrible. You couldn't come up with a new way to do it if it threatened the old way to make money. And so we started to break down all these inputs and ways that have influenced what we create today and how we create within this system. Now, in order to quantify how much creative capital is harnessed today via Taylorism, I want to ask you a question. What percentage of your creative ability is harnessed by your day job? Out of 100%, what percentage, what number would be equivalent to your day job, not all your extracurriculars, but just your day job. Now think about that. We'll come back. So again, in order to understand how we got here, let's take a look back at the most prolific era in human history, the Renaissance. This is about 600 years ago, and it lasted for a few hundred years. How did the creative Renaissance actually produce such epic advancements in human society? Well, it was really a patronage model from the Medici family, who actually supplied funding for the arts, for culture, for architecture, Brunelleschi's dome, all kinds of things. And that allowed creatives to actually be able to focus on their work, not necessarily how they make money. Again, focus on the work. It could be long periods of time. It could be a 50-year project. It could be a lifetime. And that was okay. Very different from the world we live in today. So, very interesting story about the Medici family and why they patronized the arts. They weren't really just doing it out of the kindness of their heart, but in fact, the Medici family were the bankers for the Vatican, and it was illegal to tax the Vatican, and they were. And so for a long period of time, they had to figure out ways to get rid of this illegal money to, keep themselves out of jail. Interesting story, but in culmination, it actually led to the most prolific era in human history. So we're thinking about how industries are organized over long periods of time, and really there's nothing that can compete with the Renaissance era creatively or from an innovation standpoint. That's wild to us, given how much advancements in society, in technology, and in communication, tools, manufacturing, and yet we are still unable to produce the advancements of the Renaissance. Well, that means that we have to start looking at today. How is creative capital harnessed today? And think that you and I have ourselves a ton of creative capital, creative potential. And then with working together, it actually amplifies the amount of creative capital in the world. It's ever going. You influence me, I collaborate with you, and guess what? We're inspired, and inspiration sparks whole new creativity. So it actually amplifies over time. But right now, the corporate patronage model isn't able to actually harness that creative potential. It's really quite poor at it, and that's the number that we would like to talk about in just a little bit. But the most important thing is to realize that right now, all creativity is being organized by a model, again, that's a 140-year-old model, but in a way that's meant to benefit other people. So we're always having to work in this environment and actually produce at ever increasing rates, creativity on demand. And if so, then we just luckily get to keep our job. We think that the future looks like a drastically different peer-to-peer industry. One where the independent sources of creation, not the brands or the companies of creation, but the independent sources of creation can actually connect and work together to amplify output, to cross-pollinate industry to industry, new ideas and new ways of innovating for the future. And we get to circumvent all the corporate patronage demands, all the hurdles, all the shareholder value creation, executive pay, all those types of investor driven mandates. That creates a for-profit only system. We believe that creatives, if working independently and can work together, actually create a peer-to-peer relationship that connects those independent sources and frees us from the corporate patronage model. Do you understand that? Do you understand how powerful That is, if the entire creative industry could be freed from the briefs of for profit for somebody else. We're just fascinated by how much potential there is in this space.
If you're as optimistic about the future as we are, well, we need your help. Okay? So join Madeium.com and the community of the world's best creatives. Together, we're going to be able to create a peer-to-peer network and really circumvent a lot of the corporations. So follow us on Twitter and Instagram @MadiumMade, and we just launched Discord as well. We've got awesome new projects that are happening right now. NFTs dropping in the sneaker space, footwear artists, designers, sneaker customizers, as well as the world's top skateboarders and photographers. So hit us up. We're always looking to add talent in the Web3 space and the digital creators that are able to create in AR and VR and in the metaverse. Hey, this is really built for you. So hit us up, and until next time, talk to you later.